If we sold a pen test to you, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion we were going to get in. Things like CISOs barely existed back then, and now they're pretty common. People just are trusting, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think as humanity, we should be a little trusting. It's okay to question suspicious activity, right? I always say if you didn't make the phone call, you don't give any information away, right? Most organizations lack asset management. Right? They don't know what they actually have. I hate this. People say best practices.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean anything.
You're listening to the Ransomware Rewind, where we break down the latest cyber threats, data breaches, and security solutions that matter to you and your business. Stay secure. Stay informed. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Ransomware Rewind podcast. Today, I'm joined with Wil Klusovsky, a cybersecurity veteran and actually a U.S. veteran as well, with 24 plus years across consulting and managed security, leading service delivery, product, GTM, and strategy. He's the host of the Keyboard Samurai podcast about the business of cybersecurity. Make sure you like and subscribe on that one too, where pros talk candidly about building and running security businesses. No product pitches, just good old cybersecurity fun. He also writes the Cyber and Tech Wisdoms newsletter, sharing practical strategies, sales, and operations guidance for cyber teams. Recently, he discussed the vCISO role and incident response and accountability on the CISO Stories podcast, tying security program design to accountability and even cyber insurance considerations, which is what I do, which I like a lot. Wil, welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Excited to talk about whatever it is we get to talk about.
Yeah, before the show, you were telling me that you were on the unit that handled all the anthrax that came into the Capitol. Tell me about that, and can we tie that to what you're doing right now with cybersecurity?
Yeah, I was in my last duty station in the Marine Corps. We were stationed just south of DC. We were a first responder unit where we were trained for chemical, biological weapons of mass destruction response. So, it was very, very unique organization to be part of. We had a lot of what we would call civilian gear because of the work that we did. So, have you ever seen the big, marshmallow man suits? Like we had all of those, like the PPE with all the different tubes and hoses, and we had vans full of chemical testing, and we had PhD people, chemists working with us, and we would go do all kinds of crazy things around chem bio stuff. And so it was a really unique experience for me. We would be, so when ricin hit and when anthrax hit in the capital area, our unit was the one that would go in and do all the cleanup. So I did a lot of work with like the Capitol Police and other areas. We'd be on standby for, when the president would do the State of the Union. We were strategically placed around different areas in case something happened. So very different than kind of the rest of my Marine Corps career. I guess to tie it into cybersecurity, it was all about preparedness. I mean, so much training. We were looking at, this is a post 9/11 world when I was there. We actually had like simulated collapsed buildings that we would go and train through, and like you'd put a gas mask on with blacked out eyes, and you would have to find your way out of these, crumbled buildings. You would, a lot of high stress training. And we had teams that would go and do the same stuff that like firefighters would do, jaws of life and rappelling and all of that crazy stuff all in one unit. So it was all about just being prepared for everything, which I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's what it's all about, right? Especially in this day and age where it is pretty much a foregone conclusion at some point you're going to have to deal with some kind of incident. And if you're not prepared to deal with it and you're not prepared to move quickly, it's going to impact you. And, if I use that example, one of the reasons I got out of the Marine Corps is because I realized just how stressful it is on the family, because every other month I had a pager, or actually it was the little Nokias, like the indestructible guys.
Right.
We had those.
Really, like
and
Nokia,
if that thing went
like
off,
365 or something?
yeah. If that thing rang or got the little text message, you had 1 hour to be in the big ass room, ready to go wherever. We stood up for the G8 summit. So anytime there was any major international thing going on or anything political going on, we were always on standby, and that's stressful. Just like you can imagine those working in the incident response world and the detection world where we are today. Similarly stressful. I won't say equally, but similarly.
Was back then, did cybersecurity or cyber incidents even come into the conversation, or is it all just uh,
It's when I decided I was going to work in cybersecurity. So I was one of two people who worked in a very small room with really thick walls and lots of locks. And he was a government contractor, and I was just some guy who knew technology. And doing information assurance, checking patching, making sure we had awareness training completed, and kind of reporting on compliance. And like I remember when they brought in this cool thing. It was a snort box. And we're like, oh, what's this tool do? What's this neat little new thing? And so, we saw IDS kind of for the first time get introduced. So yeah, I think that we there are things I can't talk about that happened while I was there that were definitely cybersecurity related. So I think that definitely was something that came into play for sure.
can you explain what a snort box is?
Yeah, so for those of you who are under the age of 40, what you now know today is the next gen firewall has this thing called detection, I'm sorry, intrusion detection systems, IDSs. So back before that was all integrated into the firewall, it was a separate device. SourceFire would probably be like the main like one you knew back in the day. Before SourceFire became a thing, they just had this box. It was just called Snort because it had a little piggy and it would allow you to kind of go and look it through. And so that's where like some of the first non-endpoint related signature-based detection traffic was going through. So
I mean, have as far as like intrusion detection, we've come a long way, but
yeah.
are we still under some of the same deficiencies that we were in back then?
Oh no, I think we've come a long way. In fact, I talked about this on my podcast with I want to say Nat Share, who's a big pen test guy. Um, because mm, let's say 10, 12 years ago, maybe when I
Hmm.
would, doing consulting, if if we sold a pen test to you, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion we were going to get in. The team I had was 100% going to pwn you, usually in a matter of hours, full admin access. Like it was pretty much going to happen. Didn't matter if we were going through web app or we were going network or whatever it was. And so talking today and having worked in other subsequent companies where that's no longer a foregone conclusion. So I think one, the technology's gotten better. Two, we've gotten smarter. Um, you know, Things like CISOs barely existed back then, and now they're pretty common. So I think we've made strides, and that's kind of one of the things I chatted with him about was like, how do I judge how good my pen test team is? Should we be getting into everybody or should we not? And he's like, no, nowadays it's not a foregone conclusion. And it obviously depends on the size and the attack surface. There's a lot more, and I think we've gotten smarter about it too. That whole idea of reduce your attack surface down as much as possible. This is back in the day of everybody just had a flat network, and now we've got VLANs and segmentation. So I think we've definitely come a long way. The blocking and tackling is still the most important thing to do most of the time, and we do still fail to do that a lot. But the capabilities there.
Just going more into that, uh, let's talk about the human element a little bit. Uh, people haven't changed since then. What parts of the human side haven't changed, and what can we do about it?
I mean, in some cases they have, and not always for the better. Um, you know, to like be sort of generic with it and like talk about different generations. So I'm very late Gen X. I'm a Zennial, so I'm between Gen X and Millennial. So we're the kind of like we don't trust anything. Like we completely like
I
The
fall
X
into that
you know,
the
we don't
X
category.
believe
Files
in it.
generation.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
exactly.
Trust
Like
no one.
Exactly. Zero
exactly.
trust. I fall into
Detective
that
That's
Mulder.
category.
exactly it. So yeah, so you know, we're very much jaded about everything, and angry a little bit, and don't trust anybody. So you know, for us, you know, things like phishing and data privacy and all that, I think all come either more important or come easier for detection. Where I look at my kids who are Gen Z and you know the Gen Z era and those who've kind of maybe not even Gen Z, but gotten into technology in the last couple of you know decades or so, are very much more okay with kind of giving up their privacy and their protection for convenience, right? So, and the other thing, you know, working in this space and other people that work in technology, we're usually not the problem, right? And so a lot of the challenge comes with the people who don't understand that, oh, you know, I'm just the administrative assistant. Nothing I do is nobody's going to attack me. My account doesn't mean anything. They wouldn't target me. That people, generally speaking, the general population doesn't always understand that. Well, I only need a little bit of information from here and a little bit of information from here. So working together to build that up in is as an attacker is going to be useful to me, and because you're not going to worry about, oh well, I just clicked on this thing or whatever, I don't really care, I don't, cybersecurity is not important, they're gonna be successful. And so I always use the example of you can Google how China built an American plane for by stealing a bunch of data, right? So they go to all these little small mom and pop places. They steal all of these little bits of data, these little designed for here's how this fuselage part's made. Here's how this is all that, and then they're able to build this next generation plane just through you know exfiltrating lots of data from other little places, little tiny breaches. They don't have to go and breach Boeing or Lockheed. They just breach all the little parts and then put it together, right? So that idea that people just are trusting, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think as humanity we should be a little trusting, but in the security world, like that's the thing. People tend to trust and not for you know most people are just trying to do their job and get taken advantage of. That's kind of the sad part. So we have to educate them on that.
It reminds me of this professor at Carnegie Mellon. He was the CISO for Alcoa at the time when the Chinese infiltrated them. It was the first like indictment of Chinese officials um, at the time for cybersecurity intrusions. So yeah, I mean they were into cyber offense before. I mean them and the Russians, of course, before anyone. You know they're still doing it, and I don't know what we can do to stop them.
There's a well-known breach that happened a long time ago. I think it was DuPont, um, where they traveled over to China. And they had their laptops and they put them in the safe, and the government essentially had the hotel employees go in, unlock everything, pull out their hard drives, copy it, you know, bit by bit, put it all back in, put it in, you know, and then, you know, and of course, you know, they find out however long later when they find, you know, the exact data points that they had on there traveling over there. So yeah, it's when the when the whole country's against you, it's tough.
Wow.
Yeah,
Literally.
I think about that too. Like there's Huawei, but and I probably say this every podcast, but there's a lot of people that are Chinese nationals that work for Cisco that actually are building the firewalls, that are building the hardware. So at some point, I just don't know when we can stop. Um, to that point, how do you think we can do it? Or just everything's checked before it goes into the data center, before it's into an enterprise solution, before people have access to that data?
I mean, there's two sides of that. One is the intellectual property. And somebody else I talked to, I can't remember who it was, basically their sort of short of it was like, as long as China's developing the code, then they have the code.
Exactly.
So, so that you're never, as a company, you have to just kind of accept that, right? So that's I think on the innovation and the R&D side of things, from that aspect, but also building in backdoors and stuff like that. Yeah, for us, I mean, yeah, I think generally speaking, just like I don't think most people think about that, and I mean, they shouldn't have to, right? If you go out and buy a bunch of Cisco equipment, you shouldn't have to worry that there's a bunch of backdoors built into it, right? And I think I would expect Cisco or anybody else, like you using as an example, like anybody else who's got, stuff being manufactured in China, things like that, like, um, should not be something that we would have to worry about, right?
Good not.
True.
But that's why you do testing.
Yeah, that's why you get to say. And then I have an idea that I want to run by. I've been doing AI agents that check social engineering, and I think at this point we've got it so we've got a zero trust environment until we've got the human. And kind of like to your previous point, where an admin, let's say someone's working, we used to call them secretaries back in the day, and it's just an admin that's doing spreadsheets and whatever. That person, I think, would be willing to give up their information really easily with the threat of, hey, we're doing updates tomorrow. I'm going to call your boss unless you give me the password. What are your thoughts on social engineering and how to protect companies?
And that's actually what happens, right? It depends. If as an attacker, if you do the right reconnaissance, you can kind of figure out, is this person going to be more responsive to threat or more responsive to buddy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you need to elicit an emotional response. So there's probably tons of videos, but I remember there's a really good one with I think it was Mitnick and Dave Kennedy at like one of the DEF CONs where they literally called somebody up in real time,
Yeah.
and and it was like, hey, it's Friday, I'm the IT guy, I got to hurry up and get this thing done, can you click on this link? Okay, great. And then they just show, and just like, making it urgent, making it emotional, whether that is, hey, you and I are on the same team, let's just get through this, or it's like you said, your boss is going to find out and you're going to get in trouble, whatever that emotion is going to come back. And that's exactly what you have to train people on, to be effective training against that lets people know that it's okay to question that type of stuff. It's okay to question suspicious activity, right? I always say, if you didn't make the phone call, you don't give any information away, right? I don't care who it is. You're calling me and you say you're my bank and you're chucking a fraudulent charges. I'll be like, thank you. And I'll hang up and I'll call my bank, right? I'm not, never assume that that's it, or find a third way out of that to verify it, right? Go to your boss, or, ping the guy in the IT department on Teams and be like, hey, this dude's asking for some stuff. Is this legit? It's okay to question it. And I think that's the problem we have with the human element, is we don't invest enough in training. So the right way to do training is to do it 2-3 times a month in 2 to 7 minute intervals. Keep it constantly refreshed. Think about it like TikTok, right? If you can get somebody to sit on and scroll through some cybersecurity awareness for 10 minutes a day, 4 days a month, then it's going to be constantly in their mind. They're going to retain that, and you make it part of their life, and you have to build it into the culture. That's really what it comes down to. Doing it once a year at the end of the year doesn't work. The other thing for me that I've seen have great success with is role-based training. So as a cybersecurity professional, I hate that I have to take annual training every year, because it's like teaching you to tie your shoes, right?
Right.
I already know how to do all this stuff, right? I don't even have to read I just go to the test and like pass with 100, right? So for me, like, the training needs to be different. It needs to be better. It needs to be elevated. And me, when I've done like field CISO roles and things like that, where I've gone out to an organization and built a program for them, I would go and talk to each department and say, okay, I'm going to go talk to finance today. In addition to your regular training, you're going to get time with me, and I'm going to tell you why it's important to the finance department that we have cybersecurity. And then all of those people in there, because they do the same job, are more likely to raise their hand, ask questions, and say, well, what about this or what about that? And then in that situation, I can talk about, CFO deepfake, which we
Mm,
all saw happen, and the loss of $25 million.
yeah.
Something that if I go talk to the warehouse, they don't care about, right? And something that if the entire company's in the room together, nobody's going to raise their hand and ask about their department because they know it's that the other people don't care, right? So getting them one-on-one is the other way to kind of connect with them and again build that cybersecurity culture up in the organization.
The flip side of that, if you're doing a tabletop exercise, are you trying to get people from every department in there?
It depends on the goal. So there's a lot of different tabletops you can do. And a lot of times a tabletop exercise is a good way to kind of prove a point, for lack of a better term. So if you do have people or departments that lack support for what's going on, and they think it's unimportant, we're like, okay, great, we're going to do this exercise. Like, you think this isn't a big deal? Boom, this is what happens. This is what happens. I was talking to somebody just before this about operational technology environments, and he's going down and talking to guys with like 3 PhDs on physics and all these these machines and that do all this fantastic stuff like make energy, and they've never ever thought about what would happen if an attacker decided to breach that and do something malicious with it. And the first thing they say is, well, who would do that? Why would they do that? And then he asks again and kind of like gives a few examples. And then they start thinking about it. And then now their brain's spinning and they got all these crazy things on how you could blow something up or
Yeah.
how you could, shut some stuff down. And now, like, so similarly in a tabletop exercise, it's another great way to kind of show that example. So depending on what you want to accomplish, whether it is make a point that we're not ready, we don't have preparedness, make a point that I just participated in one recently where it was just a lost laptop, right? Which is in this day and age pretty tame, but the the business folks, we had our things to say, and then there was a whole lot of stuff going back and forth between the ops guys on, well, wait, could we really do that? Can we actually, all right, would we be able to stop the exfiltration, and I let them go back and forth at it, figuring out how they would deal with it to the like tiniest degree. And then then when that was all done, I said, well, hey, in my experience, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that if an attacker physically has a device, they're going to be able to get into it. That's what every pen tester I've ever known has to, if they want to. So if we assume this is a targeted attack, and they were going after it, they're going to get that data. And so at the end of the day, what's on that thing? And so while the technical people were really concerned about all the right things, how do we make sure all the credentials get pulled off of this? How do we make sure that they can't log on, they can't get access to anything, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I know they have access to the data. What does that mean for us? And now the conversation is, all right, do we need to call our lawyers? Do we need to call our cyber insurance company? Do we need to do this? Like, now it's no longer a technical exercise, it's a business issue, right? So all of those things can come out very differently and different depending on the type of exercise you're doing and the people you have in the room.
Yeah, kind of like another analogy is if somebody breaks into your house and takes your safe because you didn't have it nailed down to the floor. They don't have to be able to break into your safe at your house. They can just take it with them and figure it out. And they will. So they want whatever's in there.
Right. And the other thing I learned in the last couple of years, just recently in passing, how very easy it is to pick a lock.
Yeah, they do that at
What?
shows. I think that's so cool.
I mean, again, like scrolling TikTok, I see some guy. I was like, nah, I can't be. And so you spend $90, get a lockpick kit, go to the store, buy a whole bunch of lockpicks, and be like, in like 15 seconds, all these lock. I was like, it's insane how easy it is to pick a lock.
It is, and I like that at cybersecurity shows where they have the guy that says, "Hey, let me
Yeah.
show you," because it's kind of boring. We've heard it all before, but then when I actually see something like that, I was like, "Wow, I didn't realize it was that
Yeah.
easy." Because I think it's
Yeah,
just
I was
locking
at an
tumblers
event.
after all these years. It's still the
Yeah.
same mechanism that it's been for the last 200 years.
Yeah, I was at an event where we were all drinking, and we had like there was a couple things going on, and these guys had locks, and the I was talking to the guy about it, and he was pretty smug about how it's not that easy, and I had a few beers already, and I was just kind of like, yeah, huh, yeah, oh, yeah, click here, and then I just walked away.
Nice. Mic drop.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like I don't even have, because you're right. Like, yeah, the really difficult ones you have to figure, but like for the most part, you can just kind of jam it in there, wiggle it around, and it's gonna pop open.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a guy who on TikTok, YouTube, and all those channels, McNally, I think's his name, and he opens locks with other locks.
Wow.
So he basically, like, there's a whole bunch of like a lot of these the standard master locks that you would buy. You basically, if you hit them in the right place, it'll pull out. And then there's a bunch of other ones like too. Most of those little spin dial ones, you can just yank on them hard enough and they'll come apart. Like they're a deterrent at best.
Yeah.
Yeah, or there's the arcade style lock with the circle with the thing, and you can
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically buy
You just put a shim underneath, pop it.
you
Yeah,
buy like
I've
one of the
seen-
keys off Amazon and it opens those.
that too.
And like the
What were you
bike
gonna
locks, I've seen people are using like a grinding wheel to get through the bike lock, and it's so bad that people just come out with their grinding wheel and just cut right through it because the bikes now are like $2,000 or more, especially with the e-bike. So you're putting this lock on there that someone can just zip right through with a grinding wheel.
Yeah, and most of those probably don't even need that. If you do the research, it's probably easier to just. There's probably a shim that you can just, because again, most of most of those ones that have numbers on it, it's a pretty easy little shim to just stick in there and pop it.
We'll have to do a presentation on that next time.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. If we
So you
do
do
an
a lot of.
event,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say if we do an event, like if we ever do a live podcast, say pick this lock for $100, I think we can get a lot of people. And Will, you're not invited. You can win
Yeah.
$100.
No, the pressure will make. I won't be able to do it then. It'll be the one. It's funny because there are some locks that are so badly made they're hard to pick. That's the other thing.
It's interesting.
Because the tumblers just don't stick like they should. So most of those you just have to rake them. But
I
yeah,
think we have a lock picking club here in San Diego. It's like a cybersecurity. Like people do it as like a hobby.
They're all convicted felons, like trading this. Who are all these guys with face tattoos that know how to pick locks? Oh, that's your security team.
Yeah, there's a couple of YouTubers that like test like gun safes and other safes as well that are fun to follow. They'll show you like if
yeah. I
it's
haven't tried to
actually
pick
good.
a safe yet, but I have to. I mean, I have some cheap ones. I'm looking at my safes. Some of my safes to do. I have some cheap ones. I'm pretty sure I could pick, but like I have some friends with some really big ones that you couldn't carry away. Like, you know what I mean? Like double door kind of things.
Right.
But yeah.
So you're doing a lot of cybersecurity consulting when you go in and somebody's hired you and you're talking to the team. What's one of the metrics that you hear about all the time that you're like, why are you still following that metric? What are you guys doing?
It's a good question. I will say this. I think it's not about the metric. I won't say there's any one metric that people need to adhere to or not adhere to. The problem I see the most is not understanding why. So much of what we do in cybersecurity, and myself included a little bit, most cybersecurity leaders could walk into an organization and kind of be like, oh, you need to do this, 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 and this. But that may not actually be what you need to do. Because most organizations lack asset management, right? They don't know what they actually have.
Mhm.
Most organizations lack any kind of impact analysis, impact assessment. So they don't know which systems to actually need to be protected the most or need to be recovered first, things like that. Like you go back to the tabletop exercise. If you walk into most organizations and go talk to each of the business line leaders and say, hey, if everything blew up today, what would be the first thing you recovered? And everybody's going to give you a different answer. And they all work at the same company, and they all should know the mission of the company, but they may not understand that. So I think what happens is you get kind of this idea of like, well, these are the things you should do. And I actually talked about this the other day. I hate this. People say best practices.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't mean anything.
I've been hearing about
There are no best practices. There's frameworks that exist. There's NIST CSF, 853, CIS, ISO, whatever. Like there's requirements that you can say, hey, this is how we're going to run our business. And in order to even pick one of those, you first have to know, what do I have and what do I care about, right? How do we make our money, or how do we serve our constituents? That's pretty much two business missions that exists, right? So you have to first understand, well, what the systems are, what are the most important ones, and then from there, you can start to identify different types of risks. I was talking with Mike Holcomb today, big OT security guy, and we were talking about the what does he call it? It's the now, next, never, right? So in OT, there's a vulnerability. Those machines that are running, that are producing what operational technology, so shop floors, people that manufacture and make things, right? That machine runs 24/7. Yeah. SCADA systems, ICS, those systems run all the time. They can't be turned off most of the time. So if there's a vulnerability, it has to like impact safety to be able to turn it off and stop making money long enough to fix it, or it's important enough that it needs to get fixed, but it's going to go at the next time that the maintenance window is, and that maintenance window might be once a year, right? So, or it's never, because it's a vulnerability, but like the likelihood, the probability, it's not there. It's not really going to impact that. And so having all that context helps them make decisions on what they're actually going to implement from like a vulnerability management perspective. So the whole idea of saying, in that example of saying, well, you need to have all your critical patches applied within 7 days. Well, no, you need to know what patches are critical, which means actually testing them. I talked to a CISO buddy of mine a couple of years ago. He found like 600 vulnerabilities in his environment, critical and high.
600.
600 critical and high vulnerabilities. Yeah.
Wow.
So he was fortunate enough to have a team. So he had his team go and test them, and 0 of them were actually exploitable. So he could have just taken the CVE score for face and said, okay, change control, downtime, maintenance windows, infrastructure team, spend all that time patching all of those things because the CVE score was there. But instead, he tested them and was able to say, hey, you know what? None of these are really that vulnerable. I remember one he told me was like, it's a really bad vulnerability. If it gets exploited, the impact is catastrophic. But it had to be like in a certain type of document on a specific server with a specific version and somebody with a specific type of credentials, and the people who had like, it was just, once you start adding in all the ifs that had to be there to make it exploitable, it's like, yes, that's still really, it's like saying, look, if a nuclear power plant blows up, that is bad. That's a huge catastrophe thing, but what's the likelihood of that actually happening? So that's what I see most of the time. It's not about, oh, there's a specific metric that you're chasing that's wasting your time. It's, do you even know why you're doing the things you're doing?
So turning that question around, what metric or KPI should every CISO have on their weekly agenda? Maybe one that you don't see a lot, but is underrated.
I like that. Let me think. A CISO metric that should be on everybody's. You said week. Well, it doesn't have to be weekly. Let me just think.
Like when they're having their meeting with their team, maybe it's monthly or
right. I'm actually going to look at something here real quick because I have something for this, is the way I would say this, right? I actually did a post a while back on metrics and listed kind of all of the things that they need. I think overall, it's depending on who they're meeting with and who they're talking with. So if they're meeting with their peers and the rest of the executive board, the non-technicals, so to speak, right? then they want to be able to convey where things are from a business risk perspective, where they have moved, whether that is, current IT or current sort of maturity ratings towards new maturity ratings, or whether that is risk avoided or risk mitigated, that kind of stuff. So that goes back to the whole, hey, we know this machine makes $100 every minute. We've spent $50,000 to make sure that thing doesn't go down. That's good. That drives our maturity score up from a protection standpoint, right? I think those kind of topics for the executives, where they're translating that business or that technical risk into business risk, I think that's really what's going to happen. What's going to have the most impact in those conversations. So it's all about here's where we started, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and then high level, here's the things we've hit on. For the kind of meeting with your team kind of thing, and what you're doing, I would flip it to say, as the CISO, I want my VPs, directors to tell me where they are with things, because we ultimately should have a security roadmap that's driving improvement across all of our different areas. So we've got identity projects going on, we've got data protection projects going on, we've got network security projects going on, all this, everything that we've said we're going to spend money on. And me as the CISO, I've gone and told the board we're going to do these things. They're driving maturity. So I'm going to constantly, where are we with these things? How are things going? What roadblocks do you have? It gets lost a lot as a technical leader. We forget, a CISO is not really technical anymore. Like your job is business. Your job is to make sure that things are getting done, that your team has what it needs to be. There's nothing in the way, so that they can get the shit done that they need to get shit done.
Right. What are Mike? Do you have a question? I guess my question is, you can go next, Mike. Is what are companies or CISOs spending money on that is a waste of money, and what should they be spending their money on? I know it depends on their organization, but like, where do you see companies wasting their cybersecurity dollars?
Good question, by the way.
Yeah. This is another one. There are, if you know you need the technology, you're typically gonna I typically see them wasting it in two places. One, not having the expertise and just being like, we'll figure it out, we'll DIY it, right? And like, Bob over here and Mary over there, they already do 3 jobs. We're going to give them an extra job. They'll learn how to use this new tool, and it'll be fine. So basically a half-ass implementation that never gets managed, right? That's a waste, because so many times you see large complex things like DLP and SIM, get implemented and never to the full degree that they should be used, right? And that's one part. And the other one is kind of to go along those lines, is skipping out on the training. So, hey, yeah, we are going to implement this new technology. And, okay, well, what training do you want? Oh, just give us the out of the box stuff, right? Not actually learning how to optimize, build it into your business processes, right? If you talk about modern security operations, where everything really kind of needs to funnel together, and so everybody has the same amount of visibility, whether you're in the SOC, the GRC team, or the cyber, the CISO, like everybody knows what's going on, right? Getting that training and making sure that integration happens, I think, is where I tend to see a lot of the most impacts. I can't say in general that there's a technology or a solution that people are buying that they shouldn't. It's usually they're just not implementing it in the right ways, or they're making that decision. They're making that decision without the right information. So
Kind of a tools-based conversation
today,
instead of like a strategy.
yeah, like today, yeah, like today, DLP is is necessary for a lot of organizations. But I remember, say 10, 15, 10, yeah, 10, 12 years ago, it was when it was still kind of newer. I would run into a lot of companies being like, "Oh yeah, we're going to implement DLP," and this was before GDPR, and before data privacy was really a thing. So it wasn't that protecting your data wasn't important, but I would have companies that didn't have a lot of protected data. And my first question was like, oh, so your most recent risk assessment says you needed to implement a data protection program. And they're like, no, the semantic guy, brought me just showed me the shiny key, the shiny toy, and I want to buy it. And so like, well, this is the analogy I use all the time is I can put laser beams in my air vents and no criminal's ever going to crawl through my air vents and get into my house without me knowing. But if I leave the front doors unlocked, it doesn't matter. So it goes back to like, yeah, DLP is great, but like, do you have other things? Do you have like, where are your actual risks? Is this actually going to help you? Right. That's kind of one example I've seen.
Mike, do you have anything to say about data loss prevention? Mike, are you there?
Kind of was on the lines with where you were at. And sorry, I keep muting because I'm in an area, Point Loma, where there's planes. So you guys are going to think that I'm in a war zone or something. Well, here comes one right now. I don't know if you hear it or not. But
I can't hear it.
It's all good.
No.
Good.
Yeah.
So if I blow up, then you know it really wasn't a war zone. No, but I kind of like the question you had, Joe, because a lot of stuff out there where it has like this awesome dashboard, but it's like no routing an IP or something. It's like it looks great, but it's like, what does this thing do? Oh, it no routes an IP. Fascinating. I could have done that on my own. There's a lot of bait and switch in the cybersecurity space as far as the applications. Like they're really fancy, and I think they're meant for CFOs and this is just me ranting, CEOs and CFOs, and are really not meant for tech professionals. And then when the tech professional goes up and is like, yeah, I could just do this in command line, it's not really doing anything, they get really upset. So I wanted to hear your perspective on, Will. Do you think there's a lot of like FortiGate that has things that are just really fancy but really don't do a whole hell of a lot?
I mean, you're going to get me a little out of my element here, but what I will say is, I advise a lot of startups, and when they come to me with some problem they've solved, the first question I ask them is, what business problem does this solve? Because a lot of times they'll be like, well, I was a network admin, and this part of the job really frustrated me. So I made this tool that does this thing so my job can be 15 minutes faster a day. And then when you basically calculate that out and the cost and what it matters to the CEO, he doesn't care. She doesn't care, right? Because it's not a business problem, right? It doesn't solve a problem. You're not helping increase revenue. You're not helping serve constituents. You're saving somebody some time, unless you can quantify that time savings is worth X amount of dollars that you're charging for it. It doesn't matter. So a lot of times, the little technical minutiae, that's kind of I guess my perspective on that is basically, if you're gonna be doing something, and it rightly so too. It's interesting that you said, like, because I've worked in places where I'll say a leader has come in and been like, "Hey, look at this thing I just bought. Make it work."
Exactly. So I had that kind of
Because
had to ask you that.
yeah, because like, oh, I saw it and that's really cool, and I'm like, we could do this already. You just had to ask. Like, it was data that existed. You just never wanted it, right? Like, that's the same. Like, so that's just the communication problem, I think, sometimes, or a lack of understanding on both perspectives, up and down.
Yeah, it's
But
CEO's
what is
golf
the
buddy.
business problem? What's that, Joe?
Or it's the CEO's golf buddy that told him about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy this thing for 50 grand. It's got an awesome dashboard.
I've never heard a CISO tell me they want another dashboard.
What CEOs live they want another dashboard.
Hey, you're breaking up, Mike. Can you say that again?
So the last thing they want is another dashboard. And you know, one thing, I got this theory that there's something going on with the RF signals with the plane, because every time a plane goes on, I have like there's like a traditional home network, but everything's fine until a plane goes over. And I think there is something with the RF signals from the plane where it throws off the wireless networks.
It's the chemtrails, man.
Not sure if I'm ready to jump down that hill.
But yeah, so much.
It's real, man.
It's been a long time since I've dealt with RF, UHF, and VHF.
Yeah.
So I can just say maybe.
Yeah, I mean it really doesn't matter one way or the other. It's a minor inconvenience.
Yeah.
It's usually the noise that gets me, but I just thought it was odd that like the connection seems to go out. And it may or may not be true. It just might be my imagination.
All right. Well, what's your favorite conspiracy theory in cyber, or anything?
Oh, this is a good one. Hold on, I gotta think about this. My favorite conspiracy theory. This is one you should have prepped me.
I
on.
know. It kind of just came up because I was talking chemtrails.
Yeah, no. I have to. I probably have some really good ones, but I can't think of what they are off the top of my head right now. Well, here's the antithesis of conspiracy theory, I think. Because I do love conspiracy theories. I love kind of going down rabbit holes and having philosophical conversations. But having worked for in the United States government, the idea that any kind of secret could be kept with more than like two people knowing it is ludicrous. The idea that they could orchestrate anything as complicated as some of these conspiracy theories across, all of these different things, like we struggle to do basic things in the United States government and military. You would be surprised at how non-high speed things really, really are. So for people who are like thinking all of these really crazy things happen and all that, I'm like, you don't know. It's way too. We're not that smart.
They give us too much credit.
It's just a bunch of people working in their own self-interest, and it's coming to bear as looking as like a conspiracy theory.
What's the question you usually
lose
ask?
you?
Star Trek? Me? I think my
What's that?
Oh yeah, you can ask it, Mike.
No, you ask it. My line's dropping. It might be another plane.
Okay, yeah, those chemtrails get you.
Or chemtrails.
Yeah,
The chemtrails are getting me.
drop an Agent Orange on you. What do you think the future has for us? Are we going for Skynet or Star Trek?
Oh, Star Trek is a way, way off. We are many, many, many moons away from that happening. I don't think Skynet's happening. But then again, I don't like that might be a good conspiracy theory. I might be interested in doing some research around like if we did get like sentient AI, how easily could we unplug it, so to speak?
Yeah.
I think it's more, I look at things like quantum, which is just going to change the entire world, like immediately, especially in our industry. Like encryption is just going to not be a thing anymore. Like it's going to have to, it's different, right? Things like that. So that's one perspective of it. Yeah, I know. I feel like the singularity is probably a feasible thing. The Matrix side, the whole idea of like, you don't have to live in a body anymore. You could potentially just, live in your mind and be a battery, that kind of stuff. Like at least from like that to me seems more reasonable than like a Skynet.
You don't think James Cameron was a time traveler?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think James Cameron. Oh, that's funny. I haven't heard that one before.
We should have an episode.
If he did, he would have.
Episode.
If he did, he would have gone back and made Avatar better.
Yeah.
And wrote a good story for it. So.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. What do you think about the theory that we're on a simulation? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I love simulation theory. So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like Neil deGrasse on that. Like, unless you can prove to me we're not, I kind of think that's I think it's a viable option. I can definitely see it. Um, I am not such a nihilist that I live my life like it was, because if it were a simulation, then I could be a complete nihilist and be like nothing actually matters, and I could just go around and do whatever I wanted to. But no, I continue to pay my bills and pay taxes. So
There's this movie called
Unfortunately.
Level.
yeah,
There's this movie called
uh,
Levels that that kind of talks about that, like what the meaning is if you are in a simulation. I wonder if we're like plugged in like in the Matrix, or if we're all NPCs. That's another thing I wonder.
I think I like the NPC. I feel like it is the NPC theory. Um, we see glitches a lot and things like that. Like, yeah, and there was somebody was talking about like the reason we can only see so far out in the universe is because it's essentially like it's our own personal like computing power as NPCs, or characters in the simulation, is like the computer is only generating as much as it has to, right? And so like this, the better our technology gets, the more it has to generate, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have like satellites like Voyager that are sending back these crazy pictures of other universes, and it kind of makes you question like how far can we render simulation?
Well, and then you get your mind blown away when you start to think about time and space and all of that. Like, I love JWST stuff. I think it's great. It's beautiful. But you're like looking billions of years into the future and or past, depending on how you get it, right? And there was a, um, I really, I'm super fascinated by space and like astrophysics and all of that stuff. I don't understand it, right? And so I remember like I was um, having a conversation with somebody who does understand it, and the whole idea of like, well, if you're traveling through space, you actually age differently, and that just kind of blows your mind when you really think about it, like how it actually works. Because you're like, well, no, I'm not, and because everything, yeah, this, I'm not even gonna get into it, but yeah,
But I hear
the
you.
whole idea of like,
The whole
yeah,
quantum model, I don't understand it. Like when they just say, "Hey, well, wait a minute, a zero and a one is a zero and a one at the same time." What does that
same
even?
time, yeah,
What does that even mean? Like it's hard enough for me to understand binary math, but like with quantum math, is like, and then they start talking about,
yeah,
and these are same people, and it's like, yes, a zero and one's the same thing at the same time, and then they start talking about quantum reality, and like, I think it's fascinating, but it's like a Ray
yeah.
Bradbury novel that just never ends, and then I just let them talk. It's fascinating to me as well. I just don't understand it because I'm not that smart. I like binary.
Yeah,
I like 3 times 3 equals 9. There's no gray area there. Like on the
I have a,
sorry, go ahead.
I have a friend who, uh, he codes at that, like the whatever the lowest layer is, like that kind of thing.
Wow.
Like, and he's brilliant. Like, like that's like he helps make the chips. He's worked for like Palm and Sony and Apple and all those companies, right? And like, and it just, yeah, he just brilliantly weird. Like, it's just like it's a different world. And like the brain just works differently. It's harder concepts to grasp.
I have the theory that their mind is quiet. Like when they're doing what they're doing, their mind is quiet. It's not thinking about anything else. And like if I've worked with people that are like programmers, like to me, C sharp would be a nightmare, or just coding in C++ plus plus all day long would be a nightmare. But they can do it and sit down for 8 hours at a time and just get it done without getting sidetracked. So I don't know. To me, it's fascinating. Maybe it's because that.
Yeah, low level programming. That's a whole. It's insane. Like, I'm glad it's the same. It's also, I'm glad they exist as much as I'm glad that there are people who go to work every day as network administrators and SOC analysts, whatever, because like I could never, I can't do the same job for, 40 years. Like,
Mm,
just come to work every day, just like, hey, today I'm logging into Cisco routers again. I couldn't do it.
good times.
And I have friends who do, like, been doing it forever. I'm like, thank you for keeping the world running.
Yeah, exactly. My dad was in the
Well, I
Navy.
change jobs every 2 years.
Yeah,
Speaking of
me
keeping the
too.
world running, where's our weakest point? Like If you're an evil scientist, you wanted to
Oh,
stop the world from running, what would you hit?
I mean, I would easily go after anything nuclear, whether it was energy facilities or um, at weapon stations, things like that, submarines, whatever. Like that's what I would look to do. I would find a way to target those areas. It probably, I hate to say it, probably the energy industry, because like I feel like that's going to be the easiest way to get in and do a lot of bad damage really quickly.
I mean,
Like that's kind of it.
you'd be able
That,
to turn off all the lights, basically.
yeah. Well, or even worse, like light something up. The other part, if I just wanted to create straight up terror, is the automobiles.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah,
It's like
there's
the day after tomorrow with the Teslas that keep running into each other.
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, I remember when I can't remember the guy he did when he first did it long time ago with the Jeep, and he like had to take the dashboard off and he hacked it all up and like could show that like he could get into the can and all that stuff and use it. And then now it's like, oh, you can just do it remotely through the Sirius XM.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
You know? So yeah, I think that would be the way that I would just cause like total havoc.
Just get all the
Time for
Tesla
me to buy
batteries
an
to
old.
overheat.
Gonna get an old car with the carburetor, just the old school car. I'll be safe. I'm screwed right now. They can get in my
I
car.
still want my fuel injection.
Exactly. You get in my still get in.
Oh, well, where can people find your work?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is my primary place, so it's /Wil Klu, WILKLU. I do have a YouTube channel, as you mentioned, Keyboard Samurai, where we talk about cybersecurity and tech across everything. So it's for professionals, business people. So we'll talk marketing, we talk career, we talk technology, whatever. And then I do have a website if you want to reach out to me for whatever reason, whether it's to book me as a speaker or pick my brain or whatnot, or buy some services. That's wilklu.me, so wilklu.me.
What's the topics you speak on? Or
So
what's
I
an example of
do,
one of your talks? That
yeah. So I've been running a how to build a cybersecurity program for a couple of sessions now for different areas. I'm doing a talk in Houston at the end of the month on how to do what I call EEC marketing. So it's education, engagement, and conversion. So it's basically building a marketing engine or a go-to-market engine that gets all your leads come inbound, so you don't have to do as much like cold calling, and like you just get enough people beating down your door that's your business, right? So that's there. So anything sales, marketing, GTM, and then general leadership, technology, cybersecurity stuff, I'm happy to chat about too. So
well, huge thank you to Wil for joining us on the show. Make sure you follow his podcast, Keyboard Samurai. I think you gotta support these small up and coming podcasts because you want to be an OG when they're big, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Make sure you subscribe to
This is the
ours
best place
too,
to get.
right?
That's right.
The best place to get education these days. It really is.
Exactly. So thanks again, Wil, for being on the show. And everyone out there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and make sure you think twice before you click.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wil. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, man.